Welcome into the Bears Squad Show. I'm Joe George, post-game host, and I cannot believe I'm saying this, but the Chicago Bears are the #1 seed in the NFC.
I'm Lauren Cox from Locked On Bears, and they earned that #1 spot by manhandling a top NFC East team in Philadelphia that looked like a real contender.
Taylor Dahl here, host of Making Monsters, and it is hate week in Chicago as the Bears take on the Packers. Let's take a look at that.
Bear down, Chicago. It's the Bears Squad. Everything Chicago Bears, every week. Covering all the big hits and game-changing plays from the Windy City. The way only the Locked On Podcast Network can. From Soldier Field to the next great chapter, the Bears Squad Show starts now.
Welcome into the Bears Squad Show here on the Locked On Bears YouTube channel. Thanks for hanging out with us and anywhere you get your podcasts on Apple and Spotify. Make sure you hit that subscribe button, give us a like and a follow. We appreciate that, and thank you for supporting this show and making Locked On Sports the #1 sports podcast network. On today's show, we're going to talk about the first place Bears. How sustainable is this? Can they actually get the top seed in the NFC this year? We'll take a look back at the Black Friday game versus the Eagles. We'll preview Bears-Packers coming up this weekend. And we're just going to have to talk about from a bigger picture perspective of who's actually good in the NFL, because this season has been crazy so far. It feels like it's not slowing down at all. But Lauren, Taylor, hope your holidays were good. I mean, Lauren and I were hanging out on Black Friday after the Bears-Eagles win. So, Taylor, I'll start with you. How's it feel to look at the standings and just see that the Bears are the top seed in the NFC right now?
Yeah, it's crazy. I honestly feel like I'm still in shock some of the times, like today and yesterday on Helmets and Heels, they'll be like, they'll mention and the top seeded Bears. And I'm like, well, that's so crazy. And honestly, I feel a little bit ashamed of myself from the beginning of the year because I didn't even have the Bears making the playoffs when I did my year predictions. I didn't think they'd be bad. I predicted 8-9 wins, but I thought that the Packers and Lions and Vikings would all be in the mix down the stretch. And because of the schedule, it just wouldn't work out in our favor with a lot of things. I thought it would take a little bit of time for Ben Johnson and this offense to get going, which it has. And I'm sure we'll get into some of the things that still need fixing. But I think that now looking back, they've done it in a way where they're not playing perfect football. There's still things that need to be fixed when it comes to Caleb Williams. And obviously Ben Johnson spoke on that now today. And then you talk about penalties. You'd still like to see some less of those. But now you're starting to look at a team where the defense is getting healthier. I know the linebackers are hurt, but a secondary that's been hurt all season pretty much is starting to get a little bit healthier. The linebackers who have had to step up has done a pretty good job. You're seeing a little bit more pass rush and creativeness. They could run the heck out of the ball, and the special teams has gotten better. So all of the things that we kind of felt week to week, how do we fix all of these things at one time, are all starting to settle in. And it looks like a team that deservedly has this record. And I know that was the frauds and this is the easiest schedule and all of this stuff. I think they've really started to prove themselves that they are a good football team. And yes, maybe there's some cracks here and there, but they actually play good football.
Yeah, I mean, it's that ongoing theme of finding a way to win, but like getting even better at finding ways to win, right? Like it's not about necessarily it's not finding ways to not lose, but like finding ways to dominate, right? Like finding ways to play even better, finding new and better ways to play better. And I think that's the thing. It was like this sort of constant growth. There's an aspect of that isn't going to keep literally getting better and better every single week, but that there's going to be a leveling off at some point, but like they've been able to kind of match the opponent as the level of competition has increased. And I think that's where you get such a good positive feeling about this team, that like they've gotten better as the opponents have gotten better. And you feel like, well, then on this trajectory, I mean, who can't they at least, not who can't they beat, but like who can't they beat, right? Not that you think they're going to absolutely beat every opponent they face, but they are capable of seemingly beating anybody in the NFL at this point.
Yeah, it feels like the Bears are, and that's why we'll talk about, more later in the show. But just like as you look at the NFC right now, every week it feels like there's some kind of loss that's hard to explain, whether that's the Browns beating the Packers earlier this season or this last weekend, the Panthers beating the Rams. And now you got the Bears at the top of the NFC. And it's hard not to start thinking bigger at this point with the Bears season. Like we were all pretty much when we before the start of the season, we did one of our first squad shows together and we previewed the year and we all talked about somewhere between 8 to 10 wins. was the good number. And there's obviously more, it's more about the development of Caleb Williams and Ben Johnson, the organization that we were more focused in on. But now that they're at this mark of 9 wins already and they sit at the top, it's hard not to think about being the 1 seed this year. That, like, Drake May in the AFC, Caleb Williams in the NFC, like 2 new coaches, 2 second-year quarterbacks could be at the top of the AFC and the NFC when the playoffs start. And so, Taylor, like, how are, from your perspective, are you thinking be the 1 seed now, or are you still kind of like it's the playoffs are still the first goal? Like, how high are your expectations or your hopes for the season now at this point in the season?
Yeah, I tweeted saying at this point, no matter what happens, you have to be impressed. And I genuinely mean that. But with that being said, I think the bar has also leveled up. And I think you start to say, okay, maybe before the season, that playoff goal honestly maybe seemed a little far for some people. Like, probably not this year. Next year, it's going to take some time. And then as the season started going and you were winning some of those fourth quarter close games at the end, you're like, okay, like, this team can battle at least, so they can get into the postseason if a couple other things happen. But that's starting to shift now into something where it's like, why not? Why not the Bears? Because to me, I feel like if you hit the stride at the right time, you're first. Like, all you got to do at this point is win. And you've been able to do that for a while now. You talk about your losses, and it's week 1 against the Vikings. We've talked about that so many times, but you're a holding call away from winning that game. And then you get beat really bad by the Ravens and a backup quarterback, and that kind of sucked. And so there was like this kind of feeling in the beginning of what is the identity of this team. I think the biggest thing is that we figured it out, and it's run the ball and don't put so much on Caleb at this point in time, which I don't think anything's wrong with that, by the way. I think it's okay to say, hey, we have a run game that can carry some things for now until Caleb's fully comfortable in the system and all of the things that we want to see level out. But I do think the physicality on both sides of the ball between the offensive line, even with the beat up defense, you're still seeing that. You're seeing these guys get takeaways. You're seeing every week it feels like somebody, Nashawn Wright a lot, is getting takeaways. But it just, why not? And that's what I keep asking people when they say, no way, like, this team's fake. There's no way they're going to be able to, 1 seed aside, just win the division. Why? What can't they do at this point in time? I think they've shown you they can dominate the bad teams. They dominated the Cowboys. They dominated the Saints. They've won the close games when it comes down to needing final score in the final seconds. And now they just beat the Eagles they're checking all of these boxes of what they couldn't do last year when it comes to winning on the road. And when it comes to finally beating the Vikings this time and beating the Eagles on a day when everybody's watching. The last few years, anytime everybody's watching, the Bears aren't doing what they need to do. And so I do think you're at this point in time where they're checking off all these boxes of, okay, you ask us to do it and we can do it. So I'm starting to turn to the point where until they show me that they're not going to be able to Lauren's part, I don't want to say find a way to win, but find a way to prove that they can match anybody, then I'm going to say they can. And I think the large part of that is Ben Johnson and what he's able to do.
Yeah, I feel like you can only be a fake good team for so long, and I think we're past that threshold, right? Like, I don't know exactly what the length is. I mean, maybe 6 weeks in the NFL where you can beat some bad teams and trick everyone into thinking you're a good team, but like the Bears have won 9 out of their last 10 games, and like at some point you've just proven that you're real. Like, no matter who you're playing, it's really hard to win that many games, and like bad teams or fake good teams can't consistently win that many games, even against bad opponents. And we'll talk later about how other teams keep losing to bad opponents along the way here. So yeah, I think they've sort of just like lulled everyone into thinking that they're good, and then like consistently proving it to the point where like, sorry, you can't really doubt them anymore. And yet it's funny when you look at like the playoff predictors, and like the Athletic has a thing that gives everyone odds for the percent chance to make the playoffs. The Bears at the 1 seed have lower odds than the 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 seeds to make the playoffs. Of all the playoff teams, the Bears at the 1 seed have the lowest odds to make the playoffs still, which is such like a weird thing to still wrap your head around. I think it's a reflection of like, there's still some doubt about this team, and I think they prefer to be doubted a little bit as long as they can be.
And schedule, I think schedule is a large part of those predictions too. We get to the part of the schedule where it's hard. You're not going to deny that playing the Packers twice, the Lions again, and the Niners is an easy path. Even the Browns aren't a good football team, but they have a really good defense. So there's some things that offensively you're going to have to battle in that game. And I think maybe it's more that than a reflection of who the Bears are. They're saying, okay, here's who the Packers have left. Here's who the Lions have left. Here's who, the Rams, whoever is up there in that NFC top. And the Bears have a tough schedule, but I think a game, and we'll talk more about the game this weekend, a game like this weekend can really catapult things into, like this team is serious right now and they're playing their best football, and that's when it matters.
Yeah, we mentioned this in the post game, and the line hasn't changed, but the Bears are 6.5-point underdogs again this weekend. They were 7-point last week to the Eagles. They went outright and they dominate the Eagles, and then Vegas puts out the line and they're huge underdogs immediately. And I think that changes if they win this weekend. That like Vegas starts to catch on a little bit, but maybe not. And I don't want to say the expectations, to be the 1 seed, because I don't think it is, but I do feel expectations that the playoffs are there. And I think Lauren, what the Athletic, it was like 77% chance, I think it was, to make the playoffs for the Bears. Like even that feels like a win in a way to just be there at this point in the season. It still feels all kind of surreal that they've gotten here. And I think we would all say Ben Johnson's, as Taylor said, the number one reason why the Bears are in this place. Him and the coaching staff he assembled. From Lauren, we'll start with you on this one. From the players on the field, what do you attribute the most to winning 9 of their last 10 and the Bears being in the position that they are right now?
Yeah, that's a good question. When you kind of isolated to just players on the field, then I think the big thing you got to point to is the improvement on the offensive line. Just that group being able to run the ball as effective as they have and give Caleb the kind of protection that he's had. It certainly hasn't been perfection every single week in either department, but it's so much better than it's been in previous years, and something that you can like weirdly count on it and rely on it in a way that like in the past, it's like maybe you'll get a good game this week, but you might have some trouble with it. Like I saw somebody posted the starting offensive line from last year against the Green Bay Packers in week 18. It was like Larry Borum and Jake Curran and Coleman Shelton, and Kevin Jenkins was out that week. I mean, it was just backups across the board, and somehow they won that game. And it was always like somehow they won in spite of the offensive line. And all of a sudden it's like, yeah, I mean, maybe left tackle's a question mark here and there, and you wonder what you're going to get every week. But like, it's not really a thing we go into the matchup saying, how are the Bears going to be able to hold up front in this game, even against a really good Eagles front, or even against a really good Steelers front. And now this week, even against a really good Packers front. Like there's always the Micah Parsons question, but like for the most part, I don't see anybody panicking too much about this Bears offensive line ability to hold up. And that's not something we've been able to say since the Lovie Smith era.
Yeah, I think the offensive line is a very obvious but good one, because I think in so many aspects, I mean, you talk alone, Caleb Williams was sacked almost 70 times last year, and he's only been sacked 19 times through their 12 weeks at this point. And that's huge. That's a massive, I can't do the math right now, but how many more times he'd have to get sacked in 5 games to get to 68 feels like a lot. And so I just think that between that, you talk about being able to run the ball, but I also want to give credit to other people for those things, because Caleb has also done a way better job at getting rid of the ball, not taking sacks, some of that. So yes, the offensive line has helped, but also Caleb's helped in that area. And I also think we talk about the run game and how much the offensive line should be credited for the run game, as they should. Running backs too, I want to give love to both DeAndre Swift and Kyle Monangai, because I feel like we've seen really good things from both of them when it comes to vision, when it comes to making cuts. And it felt like such an issue from DeAndre Swift, even early this season, but especially last year, and being able to see the field. I don't know if we're thanking Eric Bieniemy for that. I don't know if we're thanking, Ben Johnson and his scheming up how he does the run game sometimes and switching it up and putting them both in positions to be successful and to succeed to where they don't have to do too much. I mean, you talk about even the yards before contact, and it's huge. Everything is kind of clicking in that area. So I think the offensive line is such, especially to me, the interior, because it just felt last year that the interior, granted a lot of injuries involved in that, just never clicked whatsoever. And at this point, game by game, we're seeing Dalman Tooney and Jonah Jackson just get better and better together. And it's kind of fun to watch. And to your point, Lauren, it hasn't been perfect. There's still some times where you see some guys get through. You see Caleb having to leave the pocket because he is getting pressured maybe a little quick at certain areas. But to credit to him, he's not taking the sacks he was. I almost want to give some love to some of these defensive players like a Deshaun Wright, who stepping up in a really big role where everyone was absolutely terrified. Yes, there's some plays where he's allowed some touchdowns. He's allowed some, some big chunk plays. But getting the turnovers he has been able to do consistently, I think, is massive, because several of these games, the Eagles game, not so much, several of these games have come down to the final minute. And if you don't get that turnover battle, if you're not winning that turnover battle, usually you're not winning the games. And they've been able to consistently find ways to force turnovers. And I think that's been huge. And I can't say one person, Deshaun comes to mind just because of the role he's played in that, and obviously having 5.
Yeah, I was going to say Deshaun Wright and Kevin Byard for me too. Just like the impact that they're making, whether it's from a huge bounce back year in Byard or Wright, just filling that gap for Jalen Johnson, Tyreek Stevenson, whoever he's in for. And as the Bears get healthier, it feels like he has to have a role on this team, because they just keep committing, forcing these turnovers in a way that we all felt was unsustainable.
Mm-hmm.
We said 4 turnovers was unsustainable. They're still getting that 1 or 2 every single game. Like the impact you're getting from just your defense. And I think in crucial situations too. And, the last 2 weeks, the big guys up front getting big stops on tush pushes against the Steelers and the Eagles has been massive. So they're just kind of finding a way, like, and all these reserve players just kind of keep pushing through. As you said, Taylor, earlier, like these linebackers are 5th, 6th, 7th guys on your roster, and they're playing good football, and you're going to get healthier at some point. So a lot of people deserve credit with where the Bears are at right now. All right, let's take a break. Let's take a look back at the Black Friday game. What stood out on the rewatch of what you saw versus the Eagles, the run game, the pass game, all of that. We'll get to that next year on the Bears Squad Show.
The Bears Squad Show is brought to you by our friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. NFL Sundays move fast. One big play and suddenly everything feels different. And that's what makes live betting with FanDuel so exciting, because you're not just watching the game, you're reacting to it in real time. With FanDuel, you can place bets as the action unfolds. Every drive, every momentum swing, every highlight moment, every Caleb Williams comeback drive. Live betting is best when that game starts to shift. That receiver gets hot, the defense tightens up, maybe a momentum flip after a turnover, and FanDuel lets you jump into that moment with live spreads and money lines that adjust instantly. Like right now, Bears-Packers has the Bears as 6.5-point underdogs on the road, but the money line is Bears plus 245 if you want to call the upset straight up, and the over-under is set at 44.5 points. So if you want to be right in the middle of all the action this season, visit FanDuel.com and place your NFL live bets all season long. FanDuel, the game moves fast, and so can you.
All right, so when you go back and rewatch the Eagles game, Lauren, and obviously Black Friday games, we've had a couple more days to digest everything that's happened. What's the biggest thing you saw that still kind of surprised you as you rewatched that game?
I mean, part of it is just not having indigestion when redigesting that, right? Like that you didn't have to sweat it out or be close or fight at the end. And that's still like the most surprising of like how consistent from quarter 1 to quarter 4 this team was. And I mean, they kind of abandoned the run a little bit and a little bit towards the middle of the game here and there, like certainly not perfection by any means, but just like coming out and establishing a tone, being able to ride that throughout the game, have a lead, hold on to a lead, and really feel like you are firmly in control from start to finish without really having to sweat it much at the end. I mean, it's all about the running game and the 200-yard rushers and being able to control the line of scrimmage, et cetera, et cetera. But like the bigger picture, it's what that represented over a really good football team on the other side.
Yeah, I think that when you talk about this game, the one thing I keep going back to is something that I had mentioned a few weeks ago about what the Bears seem to have struggled with, and that was with quarterbacks who could run and move and use their legs. And what they were able to do to Jalen Hurts, I mean, you didn't end up getting sacks, but I think the pressures you were able to create and some of the confusion and things that Dennis Allen and that defense was able to do to just make Hurts so uncomfortable. I mean, I don't know if I've seen him throw the ball as bad as he was on Friday. And there was just misses all over the field. And yeah, he burned you a couple times with AJ Brown. And that I feel like it almost was like the Bears were like, you can have that, but you're not going to be able to do anything else in this game. And that's fine with me, because when you're missing pieces defensively, sometimes you have to take that in as a loss and say, hey, this one person's going to hurt us, but can we stop the run? And can we keep Jalen from doing anything, creating, long runs himself? And can you get some of those other guys kind of contained? There were multiple times where I saw open wide receivers. Jalen Hurts just wasn't getting the ball to them. And some of that may be coaching, some of that may be play calling. But to me, I want to give a lot of credit to what the Bears were able to do in containing a guy that really can use his legs. And I know the Eagles feel like they're this weird team right now and they're not playing their best football in general. But to me, that's a quarterback that on a normal day in previous years would have probably had like 100 yards rushing and also been able to find some other open receivers that were there in the middle field. And they just had his head spinning for a little while. It looked like he didn't know what to do with the ball and when to kind of pull the trigger on making some of those throws that he normally would have been completions.
Yeah, I think it's a great point because like he just didn't look, and I think most of the season he hasn't looked right. Whatever's going on with their offense, I thought there was a chance we were going to see an offensive coordinator, get fired, and that didn't happen. Obviously, instead his house got egged apparently, which is that's tough.
The
but
OC.
Yeah, the OC. Yeah, so they did a really good job, I think, against Jalen. And if it was, hey, we're going to let AJ Brown be AJ Brown, and his one touchdown catch against Tyreek Stevenson, I think it was a great play. It showed why he's still a number one wide receiver in the NFL, and he showed up in a big way. But I thought the Bears, like, they just did a great job. And because I was going to the game, I was worried about like Saquon Barkley. It's like he has not had a good game pretty much all season. I was like, it would be so Bears to let Saquon Barkley go out there and rush for 200 yards for the first time this season and be a monster, and they didn't allow that either. So I was, someone in the comments talked about like the Bears PTSD that we all kind of have, and that felt kind of alleviated rewatching this game too, where it's like, man, they did a really good job shutting down Jalen Hurts, not letting Saquon Barkley get loose, and overall, I was really happy with what we saw from the defense in this game. To kind of go ahead, Lauren.
I was gonna say I'm still gonna need that Bears PTSD alleviated against the Green Bay Packers on.
Yes, yes.
Like that's the one last big hurdle that, like, they beat them last year in Week 18, but like this is like new leaf. Like I got to see that too. But that's the only one that's still left for me.
Yeah,
yes,
it's Toyota-thon. Sure. So
that's when Jordan looks good, right? Isn't that his thing? Like he's always great during Toyota-thon.
Yeah.
The other thing from this game, and it kind of goes back to what we were talking about in the first segment, just like the Bears being the top seed in the NFC. But Caleb Williams completes 47% of his passes in this game. He's at 58% on the season. And I think if you had showed me just completion percentage, in these games, I would have said, yeah, the Bears probably aren't a very good football team this year. And it's not all on Caleb. Like there's been drops, there's been slips, and then Caleb's missed throws too. So when you rewatch the game, Lauren, what did you see from Caleb in this last game? Because again, in terms of completion percentage, it was probably one of his worst games of the season. Yeah,
I still keep finding myself not overly concerned about that as an issue. You do wonder, like in a small sample size any given Sunday of the NFL, that could it be an issue at some point? Yes, but big picture, like, am I worried about it for his longer development? No, I'm not. I think when you look at when and where he's missing some of these throws. I mean, I believe he had 4 throwaways in this game, plus a batted pass at the line of scrimmage, plus a couple where receivers fell down, plus at least one miscommunication where I think Luther Burden stopped the route that he thought he was going to keep going. And like, I think if you take away all of the like little bit more like self-inflicted type of wounds, as opposed to like true quarterback missed the throw type of throws, then I think you're left with a pretty normal amount of quarterback accuracy. Like, yes, there are 5 to 7 throws a game where he misses a guy. He's overthrow, underthrown, in front, behind, however. And that's probably like 1 or 2 more per game than I'd like it to be. Like, it's not where I need it to be, but like that shouldn't necessarily cost you in most games and in most situations. Like, he's not dramatically way less accurate than every other quarterback in football. I think he's just like slightly less accurate, and so much of it comes down to footwork and still needing to clean that up. That's not going to get fixed in the middle of the season. It feels like one more offseason of really refining that Ben Johnson switched which foot he was dropping back with. Like, I think some of this is pretty normal in terms of like, hey, early struggles that another year of experience working in this should improve.
Yeah, I feel like I live in like 2 different worlds with this, because I'd be lying if I didn't say that these last few games I wasn't like okay, they won and that's great. And I'm very happy, but I want to see Caleb be a little better. And I think that that's okay to ask, because I do think we live in this world where he does a lot of really good, incredible things. And I think that you see it in the glimpses. So you're like, it's there somewhere. We know you can make these throws, and we know you can do off balance and crossbody and all of these normal things, but let's just do some of the simple things sometimes. And to your point, Lauren, you add 4 or 5 throws that would have been, he had the couple throwaways. The field, I feel like they were slipping all over the place. But you add a couple of those, and next thing you know, that's 5 more. And you're like, okay, that adds up. But I want to see Caleb play better. I want to see that accuracy still kind of reel in a little bit. I think at a point this season, and it may be this weekend, you'll need Caleb to have a game. Like, there's going to be a team that's like, okay, well, at this point, Caleb Williams he's completing under 50% or under 60% of his passes, whatever the number may be. Stop the run, and you figured out the Bears offense, and you don't want it to get to that point. You want him to be able to, when he needs to, and not in the final 2 minutes of a game, but for a game consistently, be able to complete some of those easy button throws, but also still do the dynamic stuff he does. And Ben Johnson, I mentioned that he talks about that today. He also feels like Caleb needs to be better. And so I live in the world where I still want to see that. And I think part of that is because my expectations are high for him, because I've seen it. And I feel like I know he can do it. And that's the world I live in right now, that I really, truly believe that Caleb Williams can be one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. My bar there has also gotten higher of what I expect from him from game to game. But I also kind of look at it, and he threw the ball 36 times. So there's some trust factor in Ben Johnson, that Ben Johnson still believes that it's there, and he doesn't want to pull away from that. A game where you had the amount of rushing yards you did and you still throw the ball 36 times is, to me, Ben Johnson almost pushing Caleb to be that guy and be better. And I appreciate that, because some coaches would reel that in quick and be like, okay, well, you're off today. Let's just shut it down and run the ball, because that's what's working. And he didn't do that. And you still saw some throws later in the game that kept the Bears, on top. And you felt like, okay, as soon as you needed that to happen, the touchdown to Kmet, for example, like stuff like that he does. And you're like, that's so perfect and beautiful. Just make those a little more consistent.
Yeah, it's that throw is incredible, because that's the Caleb Williams that we all want to see all the time. And I thought it was interesting what Ben Johnson said today. He said ball placement. He said route discipline were things that Caleb Williams and the offense need to work on. I do feel like when we, talk about Caleb, I feel like for the last, year and a half now or whatever, like it hasn't been enough focus at times on whether it's DJ Moore or Roma Dunze, or like Lauren pointed out, like Luther Burden this last weekend, where like the wide receivers and Caleb are still not totally on the same page. And that's one area where like that hasn't improved this season in the way that I had hoped it had. And to your point, Taylor, like he has to. Like if the Bears are going to make a run this year, there's going to be a game where Calvin Nungai and DeAndre Swift can't do anything. And Caleb Williams is going to have to win them football games for more than just the final possession of the fourth quarter, which he's done multiple times this year. That to me, that really stood out in a big way for me, Lauren. Just like him saying the route discipline, it's like it's not just Caleb. Like there are other flaws with guys who are supposed to be catching the ball as well on this team.
Oh yeah, 100%. It needs to be distributed there. But I think something Taylor said really stuck out to me as like, I think you can tell Ben Johnson's not overly worried about the completion percentage. Like he wants it to be better, but like that's the whole point, that he wants it to be better, is because he's not setting up easy button throws for Caleb Williams all the time, right? If he just wanted Caleb Williams to complete 75% of his passes, he would make him a check down Charlie, throw bubble screens and slants and quick curls 35 times a game. But like, I think Ben Johnson is intentionally asking Caleb Williams to make higher level, more difficult throws, expecting and hoping him to still be able to complete 75% of them or whatever it is, but knowing that he's not there right now, and that hopefully someday he will be. But essentially like setting the bar high and leaving the offense open, kind of knowing that Caleb's going to miss some and maybe more than you'd like him to, but that is sort of the way of pushing him to say, no, we need you to hit those all the time. And I think if he was overly worried about it, he wouldn't have the playbook so wide open and wouldn't have Caleb attempting all those throws that, he's going to miss 5 to 7 of them per game. But I think the fact that they keep pushing him to attempt those and don't just simplify it and dumb it down and make it a different offense tells you that like they're perfectly fine with how this is playing out right now.
There was one that he had, I can't remember who, I want to say it might have been to Zacchaeus, but you could tell and this went back to the route running and probably timing of things, and not just being on Caleb, but the receiver also, because whoever it was like I said, I think Zacchaeus slows down a ton and he kind of turns around. And I feel like if he would have just continued to run the speed that he was running and just kind of went in motion, it would have been a touchdown. He kind of turned around and the ball went over his head a little bit, but keep the speed and it's a touchdown. And those are the little things that I'm sure Ben Johnson is watching right now because he is such a perfectionist. So he's watching this film saying, that looked like, just to the naked eye watching a game, looked like Caleb overthrew it. But when you really go back and watch that and slow it down a little bit, you can see the receiver slowed down. If he stays in stride, it's possibly a touchdown. And you're talking about, rather than an incompletion, another passing touchdown for Caleb. And I want to say it was a deeper, like 20, 25-yard shot. It was beautiful though. And I was like, it just, when you first look at it, I was like, oh, Caleb way overthrew that. And then I went back, I was like, oh, never mind. Whoever, I think it was Zacchaeus, but I can't remember. But things like that, you go back and you see, and I think this is learning experiences for receivers, Ben Johnson and Caleb. And that's why he's not taking it away, because Ben does believe that he can get better at these things, and that trial and error during a game right now while you're winning. If you can win football games and still develop and figure things out, then you're doing it the right way.
The other thing that we talked about on the post-game show, Lauren, that I wanted to go back and rewatch the interception play. I feel like there's a tell there. I think it's coming from your left tackles. It really felt like rewatching it. Like Ozzie is not in this situation. Theo Bennett earlier in the season against the Raiders, when Max Crosby was causing problems for screens, feels like there's a tell happening from the left tackles where like there is a laissez-faire approach, not aggressive. Like it felt very obvious rewatching the play from like behind the Eagles defense. You could tell it was a screen pass. Like that's one thing that I want to go back and look and see. I was like, okay, this looks like something that needs to get addressed. It feels very obvious in these moments when they're running certain screen passes that the tackles are they're giving it away too much.
Yeah, I'm with you there 100%. And even at that time of the game, Ben Johnson kept going to the screen pass. So like even if Theo Bennett was selling it better, I could see where defensive linemen might be more keen to look for any potential signs of an offensive line selling it. And I could also think or Ozzie Chapillo, where like, he's so focused on, oh crap, I got to block these guys. I got to remember all this stuff. Like he's more focused on, am I going to do the right job pass protecting or run blocking? And like trying to sell the screen pass is important, but 7th or 8th on the list of important things that he's trying to run through his head. And don't mess up the snap count, don't hold, and I can see where I can have some sympathy for him, but also like if Ben Johnson's got to recognize, okay, my left tackle maybe is the one who's not doing this well, then we shouldn't run that many screens to the left side. We should run on the right, or just call something else. Right? You're not forced to have to run that exact screen in that exact situation to that area of the field. Like you got other options here.
All right, Taylor said it. It's hate week. Bears Packers this Sunday, 3:25 for this one, 7:20 for the one on the 20th, a Saturday night game for the Bears and Packers. So they'll be in prime time kind of for these upcoming matchups with Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers. Let's break it down next year on the Bears Squad Show. Today's show is brought to you by Or Frames. The holidays are officially here, which means gift hunting season is on. If you want something meaningful, personal, and guaranteed to get a reaction, Or Frames is the gift that delivers every time. It's not just something you wrap. It's a way to share memories, because Or isn't your average picture frame. You can preload the frame with photos before gifting it, so when they plug it in, the memories are already there. No apps to figure out, no setup headaches, just instant smiles. Packaging comes gift ready, no price tag, no wrapping needed, which is a huge win for Christmas. I hate wrapping gifts. This is a huge win. It's a holiday gift that actually gets used, not forgotten in a drawer. For a limited time, save on the perfect gift by visiting orframes.com to get $35 off Or's best-selling Carver matte frames, named #1 by Wirecutter, by using promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. That's AURA frames.com, promo code LOCKEDON. This deal is exclusive to listeners, and frames sell out fast. So order yours now to get it in time for the holidays. Support the show by mentioning us at checkout. Terms and conditions apply. All right, Bears Packers, first one of the season. It's weird that they got one this week and another one in 2 weeks. I hate that part of the schedule. I would really like for them to do conferences by like play one game in the first half of the season, one in the second half, but instead we get Bears, Packers 2 times in 3 weeks. So, Lauren, how you feeling about the game heading into this weekend?
This is like the final boss of like, do I trust this Bears team? Where like every bone in my body is like, no, they're not going to win. Like, how can they win this game? Of course, they're not going to win this game. When do they ever win this game? Knowing that they did win the game last year, but a lot of rigmarole around all that. No, I mean, at the same time, this should be the most confident we're all in for a Bears team heading into a Packers matchup. So it's this weird internal struggle of like trusting what my eyes are seeing versus not trusting what my eyes have seen for years and years and years. But I'm left feeling like if I try and take like I don't know if the emotions, right, or take the emotion out of it and just look like how well the Bears been playing, how well the Packers been playing, like this should be a game that the Bears can and should be able to win. Like from a matchup standpoint, my fear is the more like irrational Packers magic that like the Bears will play really well heading into a Packers game and then all of a sudden play a lot more poorly against Green Bay than they have all season. And like, that's what I'm more afraid of than like, if the Bears play well, like play their usual brand of football, they should win this game.
Yeah, I always have this hesitation. I want to go back to last year and say, okay, sorry about that. I want to say that there's conversations where the last week, whatever, it wasn't Jordan Love, and you can have that conversation all you want, but it also took them a blocked field goal, the Packers, to win that first matchup last year too. And this was a bit of a disaster. We know how everything was going when it comes to Shane Waldron and Eberflus and Caleb's regression during certain points of the year. And there was a lot of things dysfunctionally happening on the Bears, and it was that a blocked Cairo field goal that ended up losing that game. And so that part of me carrying it onto a team that I do have a lot more confidence in, a coach that I have a lot more confidence in, makes me feel like this is obviously a game that I feel like we can win. I just also think, to your point, Lauren, there's always this weird Packers magic that lives in things. And I'm interested to see how they do that. And I guess it's not adversity, but how do you handle this winning that's been happening? You're coming off of your coach taking his shirt off in the post game, and everybody now is kind of like, oh, are they for real? Like, this is da-da-da. How do you handle that? Because we've seen how they've handled the bad part of, coming off a loss and bouncing back and not letting that spiral. We've seen how they've handled injury after injury. We've seen how we've handled, Caleb bad games and bouncing back and being able to kind of take you down the field at the end of games. We've seen a lot of the things that have proven winning culture. That next test is not only beating the Packers, but beating the Packers on a stretch of time right now where everybody's now talking about you and you're in the limelight and you don't want to embarrass yourself. You want to, and in previous years, you would embarrass yourself this weekend. And that's what I think they can prove on Sunday.
Yeah, I'm with you. Like they can prove that, as the NFC feels like just more and more confusing every single week, that they can kind of separate themselves. If you beat the Eagles one week, you beat the Packers the following week, like you really do it. It's hard of what do you say negative at the Bears, because then the schedule conversation starts to dissipate in a huge way that you've beaten two good teams in back-to-back weeks. I think that, the key question here is how do you handle the Micah Parsons part of this? Because he's obviously, like, no matter who your tackles are, he's awesome. He's one of the best pass rushers in the NFL. I hate that he's a Green Bay Packer with like every ounce of me that I can, because he's incredible. He's going to make life a problem. But you can attack him also in the run game. Like, that's where he's been flawed. It's the thing that Jerry Jones promoted as much as he could of why they moved on from Micah Parsons, which I think is more just a selling point, but it still proves out to be true. Like, he's not great in the run game. So, Lauren, how do you feel like that matchup breaks down of Parsons versus, I think Ozzie will be the left tackle again. I think it's his job now, or even if he's on the other side going against Darnell Wright.
Yeah, they've done a decent amount of moving him back and forth. I don't have an exact split, but it looks, just eyeball the numbers, fairly 50-50, but kind of looks matchup dependent. Some games I imagine they'll see a rookie left tackle and say, yeah, we're going to stick him over on that side as much as possible. So, yeah, we've seen already that the Bears have done a good job of trying to find ways to give Ozzie like more subtle help without completely derailing your whole offensive game plan in terms of Tooney sliding to that side a lot. A lot of times running backs will release on that side of the formation. So if the pass rusher tries to have speed around the edge, like even if the back isn't chipping them, they're just like physically in the way of where the pass rusher is trying to make moves to. And plus, like, Ozzie's been able to sometimes hold up one-on-one against good opposing pass rushers. Like, you don't want to lean on that as your whole game plan there. But like, I don't think every matchup that Parsons and Trapillo go head-to-head that Parsons is going to whoop them, and get in the backfield every single time. Like, you're going to be able to hold up sometimes on that side of the field. And we've also seen Ben Johnson have plans for like, the equivalent of, when the Vikings blitz the crap out of you and you got to get rid of the ball quickly, like whether it's a blitz or it's, hey, this one pass rusher just keeps getting in your backfield, like you got to get rid of the ball quickly either way. Like I think the Bears have seen enough different varieties of really good pass rushers or really aggressive pass rushes that whatever problems Parsons may have for them, I have some confidence that they can come up with some ideas to get around it. And then it's a matter of like receivers actually catching the ball and Caleb being accurate with those throws, right? I mean, the players still have to do their part, and we've seen mixed results at that at times, but it hasn't been enough to really cost them much in these games. And the margin of error gets a little bit smaller against Packers and Parsons.
Yeah, maybe you can do like what Vanderbilt does. They just switch their tackles depending on like the play call and whatever's going on defensively. But I mean, yeah, I think that, and this isn't the only one. You have a Myles Garrett coming also up on the schedule, and obviously the Packers twice. So you're dealing with that, and then you're dealing with an Aiden Hutchinson against the Lions. So it doesn't get easier. And at some point, you don't want to keep saying, okay, well, it's, this pass rusher is here, so how are we going to win this game? And you can't base it off one person. I think you game plan against Micah Parsons. That's what it always is going to be. He's going to be one of the main factors you're looking at defensively, and the Packers defense in general. I mean, they're one of the better defenses this year. I'm way more worried about that side of the ball than I honestly am the offensive side of the ball for the Packers. And so I do think that this is where you have to trust Ben Johnson and the schematical stuff he's done and being able to counter things. He's going to get beat. Whoever Micah Parsons, even if it's on Darnell Wright's side, Darnell's probably going to get beat a time or two. That's just what it turns into. But how do they game plan getting that ball out quicker or just massively leaning on the run? You mentioned, that was Jerry Jones' reason. The Cowboys, since trading Micah Parsons, has went from like 27th run defense to like a top 12 or something like that. So it really did make a little bit of a difference to get a guy who can actually get multiple guys. They worked on that in multiple ways, getting linebackers and defensive linemen. But if you have to lean on that, then lean on it. I don't care if you have two backs right now that can just wear this defense down. And if that's the route you need to go this weekend, just do that and win whatever way you can.
Yeah, I think it's going to be a fascinating matchup. I like that for this first one, there's this extra time for Ben Johnson. Like it's like a mini bye week, having, playing on Friday, they played on Thursday, but having just that extra time to look at the tape and figure out what can work well in your favor. Because one thing that I wonder is, is he going to, Ben Johnson this week, find a way to expose the Packers in a way that Jameson Williams and the Lions did? Like, I feel like this is the game to kind of bet on personally, like Luther Burden. I just feel like this is the game for him. Like if there's going to be a monster game from him that's not just catching the flea flicker earlier in the season, I think this is it, because the Packers defense is good, but the Lions were able to have some success without Amon-Ra St. Brown in that game. So I think they're gettable. And to your point, Taylor, like, I don't think the offense is such a roller coaster for the Packers. It's hard to know what to expect. Like Josh Jacobs is good, but he's been banged up. And Jordan Love has just been this hot, cold quarterback the entire year. And they have different wide receivers stepping up every week. I mean, Dontavius Wicks had 94 yards, 6 catches, and 2 touchdowns last week. Who knows who's going to be the best Packers wide receiver on Sunday, Lauren? It feels like the Bears, it could be you have no idea who the Bears are going to basically be playing when they face the Packers offense. And
I think you have the benefit of the Bears getting as healthy as they've been in a couple months for this game. I mean, presumably you'll get a linebacker back. I know Ben Johnson's been kind of vague and dodging questions about TJ Edwards. And, we're doing this before we get an injury report or anything this week. But, like, whether it's Edwards or Sewell, or can I hope for both at the same time? I mean, you never know. Like, you got your cornerback room as healthy as it can be at this point. I mean, I know Stevenson's been a little bit in and out, but, like, for this stage of the season, this is as healthy as we could hope the Bears would be. So you feel like you're not that worried about their receivers matching up and really taking your guys to the woodshed on the deep end. Like, they're not gonna have an AJ Brown type individual player that has a big performance. So, like, you should be fine over there. And if your linebackers are back, you're feeling pretty good about your ability to stop the run, and that you can match up a little bit better with the tight ends maybe than you would have been with DeMarco Jackson and Eamon Adbawamiga. I mean, it just feels like I can point to so many reasons why I should be really confident in the Bears in this matchup, and yet, I'm not going to get caught with my pants around my ankles again.
It's hard not to. It's just I got to see it. Like last year was fun. Like that final win. And I think it's a great point, Taylor. You mentioned it, like it took a block field goal for them to beat the Bears last year, but it's the Packers, and it's part of the reason why I was kind of hopeful Aaron Rodgers would play in that Steelers game, just to try to get, that one game of Caleb getting over on Aaron Rodgers. But this one, it's a different tone than last year. Last year, it set us off into the offseason feeling positive. But this year, just like being the 1 seed in the NFC, everything's changed. It's a totally different game this year. And I think the line, like I'm probably going to pick the Packers to win this game out of fear. I'm definitely taking the Bears to cover, though. Like, I think they're going to cover the 6.5. Like, if they lose this game, I don't think it's by more than 4 points. I think this is a really good football game that we're going to see on Sunday, and it might just come down to that final possession if Caleb Williams can get it done again. But I think the Bears, at minimum, cover this weekend, and I think, as you said, Lauren, it wouldn't shock me if they won.
Yeah, I think, Lauren, you talked about this last week when it comes to the advantage. And I know they rotated Jalen and Kyler in this last week, trying to ease them into things. It's both of their first games back. But you mentioned last week the importance of Kyler when it comes to run defense, too. And he ups that. And so we were I was expecting Philly to be able to run the ball, because pretty much anybody that's played Chicago this year, their running backs end up finding something and find success. We had Ashton Genty's breakout game, and then the list continues from there. But I do think that now you're continuing to get Kyler even healthier and on the field even more. You've already seen the impact of what CJ Gardner-Johnson can do. And there's so many things that Dennis Allen has been so creative with when it comes to that stuff. So I just feel like, just like, as I said, if running the ball is your strength on offense, which it may be, because take advantage of, that the weaknesses that they do have in Green Bay. And it's almost opposite for me on the other end. Stop the run, completely shut that down, and force Jordan Love into making mistakes, because you know it can happen. He's one of those quarterbacks, and he's really bad when he's under pressure. And everyone's like, every quarterback's bad under pressure. If you go and look at his quarterback rating and all of the numbers when he's getting pressured a lot in the game, he's one of the worst in the NFL. And so if you really can't create that, it's not, this Bears team isn't a team that's getting a ton of sacks and pressures, but if you can just force Jordan Love into a couple of mistakes, which the Bears have proven they've been able to do that with any quarterback this year pretty much, then you have a recipe for a win. Run the ball and stop the run, and take everything else, out of your control and let it go.
All right, let's take our final break here. Let's talk about the NFC. We'll hit a little AFC as well, but who's actually good in the NFC? Where do the Bears fit into that? We'll hit that next year on the Bears Squad Show. All right, so let's just start here. Are the Packers a good football team, Lauren? Or give a thumbs up, thumbs down?
Yeah, I mean, so I think there's kind of this category. I think there's kind of like two categories of like good and then like trustworthy and not trustworthy, in the sense that like every team, like there's no team that I think is immune from a bad loss. At least it's certainly in the NFC. The Patriots might be the only team right now that is truly immune from a bad loss, and even that I'm not 100% sure. So like I think there's a bunch of teams in all the NFC playoff teams are on any given Sunday could beat anybody. But also I wouldn't be stunned if they lose to the Carolina Panthers, the Cleveland Browns, and then like most of the teams outside the playoff picture are just like the bad team. So yes, I think the Packers are a good team, but I'm not sure that do I trust them to go to the Super Bowl? No, but I don't know. I don't really know who in the NFC I trust to go to the Super Bowl right now.
Yeah, I think the Packers are good. I wouldn't say great. And I think that I read this article today. CBS Sports had posted this article, and it was like their tiers of the contenders right now. And their top tier, they had the Rams and the Packers. And I was like, I feel like we're watching different football games sometimes, because I do think the Rams are one of the better teams in the NFL. So I'll just start there. I think the Rams and Seattle are two teams that have enough to be able to beat almost anybody. And I know the Rams just lost to the Panthers. Panthers are weird this year, and they beat everybody they shouldn't, and then lose to the other teams, or whatever the case may be. I almost feel like Matthew Stafford had like 300 straight passes without an interception, and then throws 2 against the Panthers. I think it was just one of those games, and every team has that. We've seen the Chiefs, even in their best seasons, have that one game where Patrick Mahomes isn't on and things kind of fall apart. But the Rams in Seattle, to me, I think the Bucs healthy. The problem is the Bucs just haven't been able to stay healthy, and not just like some guys, but when it's Godwin and Evans and Bucky Irving and Baker, and like there's only so much you can do when you're losing your whole entire offense at periods of time, and by the way, your offensive line. But those teams, I think, to me, healthy, can compete with anybody in the entire NFL. The AFC is what's tricky to me, but the NFC, I think the Packers are good. I don't know if they're great. Maybe this weekend is a thing where I say, this is the Bears' way to prove it. Maybe this is also for me where if the Packers do dominate, then I'm like, okay, there it is. They're really good again. But I just don't have the confidence. I think their line has struggled. They haven't been able to run the ball as good as they have in previous years. Jordan is very up and down. You have games like he had on Thanksgiving where that final throw where they ended up sealing the win. I was like, that was one of the most amazing throws I've seen all season from a quarterback. But then you'll see ones where it's just streaks of that. I don't really see it. So I do think the Packers are good, not great. Lions, I feel like are kind of in that same category for me, honestly. I feel like they can run the ball really well, and they have some of the best running backs in football. And I think that Dan Campbell maybe sometimes is trying to be too cute and smart. And I don't know if that's going to continue to work out for them. But it is so weird because I feel like, to me, you look at this, and to Lauren's point, I agree that I think anybody can lose to anybody this year. And there's previous years, you always felt like there was those 2-3 teams where they look unbeatable. Nobody looks unbeatable to me right now at this point in time.
Well, Taylor, you talk about the Rams having that game against the Panthers where it's just like sometimes you just kind of have that bad game because you're not going to win all the games. And like I get this sinking feeling that like the Bears are going to have one of those at some point here. Like in all likelihood, this team is not going to win every game for the rest of the season and finish 14-3. So like it becomes a question of then like when and where does that happen? And because 2 of your last 5 games are against the Green Bay Packers, that gives you a 40% chance at a minimum that it's against the Green Bay Packers. And it's probably not going to be against the Cleveland Browns. So then it's a 50% chance that it's against the Green Bay Packers in one of these 2 games. And like, I have such a lot of trouble shaking that. I should certainly hope it's against the 49ers, I guess. But if you're in a wild card battle with them, then maybe, I don't know where you're in some ways, the losing to the Browns might be the best case for a playoff picture, but not the best case for confidence in this team.
What would you choose? Would you want Caleb to win at Lambeau again? Would you rather it be that, or would you rather them get the Soldier Field win on the 20th?
Good question.
Yeah, it's like, which one of your children do you want to shoot? It's like I think I would lean win the Saturday night game because it's prime time solo game on a Saturday national broadcast. I mean, I know like the afternoon window on Sunday is still a big time too, but like something about like it's a little bit easier to excuse. Okay, you lost on the road. It's tougher to win on the road in any game, and especially in the division. But like you got to protect your home turf. So I would lean that way. But like neither one's gonna feel good.
Yeah,
I think too. Like if you play it out, the Bears. Let's say the Bears lose on Sunday, and then they beat the Browns, and then you got a chance to beat the Packers at home. That to me does feel enticing because then it shows again like they can bounce back. They can adjust and they can beat anybody again. So in a way, like I'd rather them win the home game. I think it was fun to win at Lambeau last year, but like it sucked watching like that.
Losing at home.
Losing at home, like it's just. You think back to all the bad losses you've had. Like I'd like to get a good win at home at Soldier Field for the Bears, especially because like I know we don't talk about it much on this show, but still at some point, like they're not going to be playing at Soldier Field. So like they need to beat the Packers as many times at Soldier Field as they can before they're back into it. They're in a dome for the first time ever. So I would prefer that one. The Browns game's going to be interesting. Like the line's already out. They're 7-point favorites in that game. But Myles Garrett might be chasing the sack record.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he is, but he might pass it against sacking Caleb Williams in that game. And Shedeur Sanders hasn't been great. Like that's the one where I would be obviously the most disappointed if they lost that game, just because Shedeur is struggling. Like I think there's still something there, and that defense is great, but that can help you also separate yourself from the Packers. Who are just like, well, we didn't lose to the Browns, they did, so that would be nice. That'd be a nice one to have as well against Packers fans.
And we didn't lose to the Cowboys either.
It's true.
Cowboys and Eagles. Those are three big, and those are like tiebreaker, like head-to-head matchups against common opponents is something that is farther down on the tiebreaker scale. So there's something to be said about that. But I think an AFC loss is the best for playoff tiebreaker in the sense of like that's the one you can afford to lose the most from an actual mathematical standpoint, even if it's the one that would be the most concerning, I think, of it. Because any of the other losses, it's like, okay, yeah, they might lose to a good Packers team or a pretty good 49ers team or a divisional game against the Lions in week 18. You never really know what's going to happen. But I think I'd like to see this team be in a position where week 18 against Detroit doesn't matter. You know, that either you've already won the division or you've got your playoff spot locked in and Detroit's maybe out of it at that point, or maybe it matters for Detroit, but doesn't matter for you. Like, really like to get at that spot where still don't want to lose week 18, but you can go in and take a deep breath before the playoffs. That might be a nice luxury, and you can give Tyson Bagent some run or something.
I mean, we've talked about that game so much, about like when we did like our win-loss predictions before the season, we all talked about like that game being a win for the Bears because the Lions might be sitting everyone.
Yeah.
And now it's a possibility the Bears could be the team sitting guys in that last game. It's just such a bizarre like reality that we're all living in now, about the Bears could be the team. They're like, no, we're good. Like we're locked into the 2 seed in the NFC. Like we got nothing to play for. So Tyson, it's your game. You go out there and win it for us.
I think Ben Johnson, though, because of the way, especially that first game against them went, he'll be in full revenge mode that final week. Like, let's say they're clinched, whatever. Maybe it's not 1 seed or the NFC North, but they clinched a playoff spot, and some guys are. I still think we're going to see some of the craziest, wildest stuff from Ben Johnson, just to be like, hey, like, have fun with Dan Campbell and his play calling, because we're going to have fun here. He just seems like that type of guy, and it's built more throughout the season of you see that extra competitive edge, and all coaches and players have that, but there's certain ones where you just feel it a little extra, and Ben Johnson, that's definitely been shining lately.
Yeah, I don't think, what they scored 51 points, 52 points in the first game. Like, I think even if the Bears are locked up, like he's going to have some revenge, and as the team will as well. And I know that's that balance of revenge versus health for the playoffs, it's a tightrope to walk, but it'll be interesting. Taylor, and I'm with you. I think the Rams and the Seahawks are the class of the NFC right now. I think those are the top 2 teams, and really I have the Rams significantly above it because I'm still not really a full believer in Sam Darnold at this point, but their defense is incredible, so it's hard to ignore that. I can't get over how the Seahawks use their running backs. It still makes no logical sense to me. But I think the Bears are in that next group, and it is the Lions, the Packers, the Buccaneers. Like I think they're very much firmly in that tier 2 group of teams in the NFC right now, for me at least.
Yeah, I think San Francisco's right there in that conversation.
Yeah, I was about
for
to
sure.
say Niners too.
Depending on like health. I mean, if they add more injuries, the more hurt they are, the farther down they go, the healthier they are, the higher up they go. And I always just feel like, oh well, by the time we get to week 17, they should be pretty banged up. That should be an easier game for the Bears than we think it might be, but we'll see. It kind of flows left and right there. But man, I feel bad for Detroit in terms of like the schedule that they have. I mean, I'm sure people look at the Bears schedule and say, oh well, they've got the Packers twice, the 49ers and the Lions, but the Lions have Cowboys, Rams, Steelers, Vikings, Bears. And it's just like, man, it really does lend itself towards that week 18 game. Like the Lions can't afford to lose more than like 2 of those, 1 or 2 of those, or else they're really going to be in a tough spot. And by week 18, but I'm with you that I think it'll matter to Ben Johnson. I'm curious to see how this Packers matchup matters to Ben Johnson. If you remember when he got hired, I don't remember if it was the Combine or where he said he enjoys beating Matt LaFleur twice a year. And I'm wondering, are we going to see Matt LaFleur be the one who is more responsive to that in terms of like trick plays or running up a score or something? Or will Ben Johnson say, no, I got to beat this guy because I kind of talked my smack ahead of time there? I'm kind of curious the gamesmanship between those two. And if there's, because LaFleur had something kind of snarky to say in response. I don't know.
He said, who's Ben Johnson?
Yeah. So like, do those guys have a proper handshake at midfield after the game? Like, is there drama there? Because neither one seems like big grudge guys. It seems more like they both kind of had a smirk when they were saying it. So I think there's kind of seems like a mutual respect there, that they know they're kind of playing the game a little bit. But I'm curious, especially with 2 matchups, if there's any of that kind of like extracurricular play calling there.
I don't know. Maybe we can get our friends at FanDuel give us some odds on will there be a post-game handshake between Matt LaFleur and Ben Johnson? Because it's weird. Like, you're right, Lauren. Like, it seems like there's some fun happening, but it also still feels weirdly personal in a way. Like, it's kind of strange. So I am curious to see what that looks like. And look, and Ben Johnson acknowledged the rivalry in this moment, for this game this week. So that's another thing I appreciate about Ben Johnson. Like, I think he also gets like Bears fans in a way. It's not just taking your shirt off and giving everyone free hot dogs, which I hope you got your free hot dogs today if you're listening live, or yesterday if you're listening to this later on. But it's like he just like gets Bears fans. I think that's another reason why he's so beloved at this point already as a head coach.
It's crazy to me that like I've seen a lot of Packers fans trying to argue that like what he's doing is like cringy and dorky, and it's just like you totally missing the point. Like that's not understand where like it could like a different person trying to do some of the things that Ben Johnson does, but like the way he's been acting and leaning into this like fits the sideline demeanor, right? Like it's not fake. It's 100% authentic. And I think that's what makes it not dorky and cringy. And I think it's a narrative that Packers people are trying to push that just doesn't hold up.
Yeah, I mean, that's if it was in reverse, we'd probably say the same thing. If it was like the Packers coach doing that stuff, it's just part of the rivalry. I think it's fun. We pick on each other and it's, a great time. But yeah, I think that when you watch, but it's almost like he's like a Jack in the Box where like the whole game, he's just calm and you never see any reaction. And then the moment he hits the locker room, it's just like, bam, here's all of the energy and thoughts and feelings and emotions that I've been holding in for this 4 hours of game or 3-4 hours of a game. And it all comes out. So it's organic and it's natural and it's just true reactions and true excitement. I mean, you're seeing, did we find out, by the way, who punched the ceiling?
No, I couldn't figure it out still.
I couldn't figure it out either, but just we have guys punching holes in the ceiling because they're so excited. Like it's a fun time to be a Bears fan right now, and it's been a long time since we've been able to feel this way. And Ben Johnson knows that. I mean, him and Caleb both coming here had mentioned many times that they know, like they know how much misery the city has had when it comes to their sports teams in general, but especially the Bears. And they know how badly we want to beat the Packers. That final game last year when they did end up winning in week 18. I mean, the guys, I posted the picture. It's like Agbagbamiga up in the stands yelling at Packers fans. And it's just like that. Those moments, they feel it. The players feel it, even if they're new to the Bears. And I think that Caleb, everywhere he goes, people are saying Green Bay sucks and chanting all of that stuff. And he feels that to his core. So I think that they're two guys that have so much emotion and love football so much that it's automatically they're bleeding that now. And I love it.
All right, that will do it for this episode of the Bear Squad Show. You can listen to us every single Tuesday night right here for our midweek show. You can catch myself, Lauren, and Adam Sager on the postgame show. We'll be back with you guys on Sunday. Thank you for listening on all your audio platforms, Apple and Spotify, and watching us here on YouTube as well. Make sure, as always, you check out Lauren Cox Monday through Friday right here on the Locked On Bears audio feeds and YouTube channel. We'll talk to you on Sunday after hopefully a Bears victory over the Green Bay Packers as they hope to get their 10th win of the season. Talk to you then. Peace.